That Saturday afternoon caught me completely off guard. Entering my bedroom, I froze at the sight before me. Nathan, my son, perched at my vanity, draped in delicate satin lingerie from my own wardrobe. Immersed in his reflection, he seemed entirely unaware of my presence. While unexpected, the scene didn't entirely shock me. For weeks, I'd noticed subtle disturbances in my things: lingerie folded haphazardly in drawers or satin blouses and skirts hanging slightly out of place in the closet. At the time, I dismissed these oddities as my own absent-mindedness, chalking it up to busy days and fleeting focus. Now, standing in the doorway, I absorbed the details. Nathan was wearing a knee-length white satin slip, one of my personal favorites. His fingers traced the intricate lace at the bodice, and a faraway expression softened his face. Beneath the slip, a padded bra seemed to enhance his silhouette, and I suspected he'd chosen matching panties to complete the ensemble. Yet, the delicately crafted image clashed with one unmistakable detail: a decidedly unladylike bulge pressed against the satin. I let a few moments pass before I spoke, my voice gentle as I offered to help with his makeup. The sound startled him so completely that he seemed to leap from his daydream, spinning toward me with wide, frightened eyes. Words tumbled from his mouth in stammered fragments, his embarrassment plain. I stepped closer and reassured him, inviting him to join me on the bed. With hesitance, he approached and avoided eye contact, keeping his gaze fixed on the floor. As I sat beside him, I noticed he also wore a garter belt and a pair of my stockings. Lifting his chin to meet my eyes, I asked if he enjoyed wearing my clothes. Despite his embarrassment at being caught, he admitted, "Yes, Mom, I do enjoy wearing them. I promise I won't do it again." I placed a finger to his lips, urging him to silence, and assured him I wasn't asking him to give up something he clearly derived pleasure from. I simply wanted to understand why. Slowly and tentatively, he explained that he had always admired the clothes I wore, especially the satin outfits and lingerie, finding them sensuous and elegant. The urge to experience wearing them himself had grown stronger over time. About 6 months ago, he finally succumbed to that curiosity and tried on a pair of my satin pants. He loved the feeling and since then had been occasionally sneaking into my room to wear various items of my apparel. After hearing his heartfelt confession, I wrapped my arm around Nathan, drawing him close as I gently stroked his hair. I reassured him that there was no need to feel upset. His curiosity was natural. As he calmed down and looked at me, he timidly asked if I was upset about him wearing my things. I quickly reassured him that I harbored no anger or disappointment. Unexpectedly, Nathan expressed a sentiment that took me by surprise. "Mom, your clothes are so nice. I wish I could wear them all the time. In fact, I wish I were your daughter instead of your son, so I could dress and be like you every day." I sat silently, contemplating his words. Deep down, I had always yearned for a daughter whom I could dress in beautiful clothes and help blossom into a young woman. But fate had given me only one child, my son Nathan. After a moment of reflection, I carefully considered my response. Once again, I assured him of my unconditional acceptance and understanding. Pausing briefly to gather my thoughts, I knew I had to tread carefully with what I would say next. I asked Nathan if he would like, with my guidance, support, and coaching, to embrace being my daughter, Natalie, perhaps not full-time, but at least part-time. His face lit up with awe and wonder as he asked if such a thing were truly possible. I assured him it could be our special secret. A broad smile spread across his face, and he hugged me tightly. When he eagerly asked when he could start being Natalie, I looked lovingly into his eyes and said there was no time like the present. Needless to say, he was incredibly enthusiastic about it. My first question to Natalie was about how she had managed to fill out her bra so nicely. Natalie sheepishly confessed that she had used several pairs of socks to create some shape. While they didn't replicate the weight of real breasts, they served their purpose of filling out the bra cups. Smiling warmly, I promised her something better. First, she removed her slip and took the socks out of her bra. Meanwhile, I went to my dresser and retrieved a pair of realistic B-cup breast forms. Returning to Natalie, I carefully placed them into her bra. She immediately felt the added weight and noticed how they moved with her. This brought a broad smile to her face. Curious, she asked how I happened to have breast forms. I explained that, in my haste to develop, my mother had purchased them for me to fill in until nature took its course. Natalie glanced at me with a hopeful expression and asked if my earlier offer to help with her makeup was still on the table. I gave her a warm smile, nodded affirmatively, and gestured toward the vanity. As she prepared to sit down, I gently reminded her to smooth out her slip beneath her and to keep her legs together, maintaining a graceful and ladylike posture. As I began working on her makeup, I mentioned how, as a teenage girl, her look should be subtle and balanced. I explained that many young girls tend to overdo their makeup, which can overshadow their natural beauty and make them appear less polished. I started by applying a light layer of foundation and dusted her face with powder to set it. A soft pink blush followed, adding a gentle warmth to her cheekbones, while a touch of pink eyeshadow brightened her eyelids. After a brief moment of consideration, I decided that mascara would complement her look and carefully applied it to both her upper and lower lashes. To finish, I selected a delicate pink lipstick, enhancing the fullness of her lips. Natalie observed every step closely, her focus unwavering. Once I handed her a tissue to blot her lips, she gazed into the mirror, examining her reflection. Her face lit up with a quiet confidence as she admitted that she felt pretty. I assured her she was beautiful and hinted that her look would only improve once we addressed her hair. Natalie's hair, though long for a boy, had an untamed and slightly messy quality. To transform it, I draped a pink shampoo cape over her shoulders and lightly misted her hair with water to dampen it. I carefully combed through the strands until they hung sleek and straight. After trimming the uneven ends, I applied a styling gel to give the hair some hold and shine. Next, I set her hair in rollers and secured it with a pink hairnet before placing the bonnet of my hairdryer over her head to let the curls set. While she dried, I turned my attention to her nails, tie-dyeing them up in preparation for polish. Before I could begin painting, the dryer clicked off. Removing the hairnet and rollers, I used a brush and comb to shape her hair into a soft, feminine style, perfectly suited for a teenage girl. A light spritz of hairspray ensured the style would hold its shape. Finally, I painted her nails with 2 coats of a lovely pink polish. Natalie couldn't hide her excitement over her newly polished nails, expressing her delight as she admired their glossy finish. I used the blow dryer to speed up the drying process and watched as she continued to study her reflection in the mirror, her face a mixture of shyness and pride. She tilted her head, turning slightly to view herself from every angle, captivated by her transformed image. When her nails were completely dry, I removed the protective cape and put away the tools. Before letting her rise, I reached for my favorite perfume and lightly sprayed it on her. As the delicate scent filled the air, Natalie closed her eyes briefly to savor it. When she looked at me, her face softened with a smile, and she said, "Mom, this perfume is heavenly." To plan her outfit for the evening, I asked Natalie what she would like to do. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty, as she softly asked if she might go out in public. I smiled warmly and reassured her, saying she looked beautiful, and the only attention she'd draw would be admiring glances from boys. This made her cheeks flush, and a shy smile spread across her face. After a thoughtful pause, she confessed that for her first night out, she'd like us to have dinner at a nice restaurant together. Her one request was that we dress as similarly as possible. With her wish in mind, I went to my closet and selected 2 elegant satin sheath dresses, identical in design but distinct in color. One was a deep, rich green, while the other was a vibrant royal blue. Both dresses featured short sleeves, a modest high neckline, and a matching belt that cinched gracefully at the waist. I held them up and invited Natalie to choose. Her gaze lingered on them before she said, with a touch of awe, "Mother, they are both so beautiful, but I think I'd like to wear the royal blue one tonight." I smiled, acknowledging her choice, and carefully removed the dress from its hanger. As she slipped the dress over her head and let it cascade down her body, She turned her back toward me and asked, "Mother, would you zip me up, please?" The words caught me off guard for a moment. It was such a natural, intimate gesture that hearing them from Natalie felt unexpectedly poignant. Regaining my composure, I quickly zipped her up and helped fasten the accompanying belt. She ran her hands over the fabric and murmured about how lovely the dress felt. To complete her look, I added a single strand of pearls, a pair of matching pearl clip-on earrings, and a delicate gold watch for her wrist. Next, I brought out matching heels with a 3-inch lift. I asked Natalie if she'd ever walked in heels like these before. Her smile was both shy and proud as she admitted she'd only worn a 1-inch heel, but had managed just fine. I guided her to sit while I placed the shoes on her feet, then supported her as she stood to adjust to the unfamiliar height. Her initial tendency was to lean forward, so I gently corrected her posture, reminding her to distribute her weight evenly. With my guidance, Natalie began to move with confidence, her steps becoming steadier and more graceful. Once she'd mastered her balance, I invited her to sit on the bed and chat while I changed. As I removed my black satin skirt, white blouse, and heels, I couldn't help but feel a little self-conscious standing in my lingerie in front of my now femininely dressed child. Yet, as I refreshed my makeup, our conversation about how she felt in her attire flowed naturally. After slipping into my dress, I turned to Natalie and asked her to zip me up. Her smile was gentle as she obliged, and she teasingly asked if it felt as strange for me as it had for her earlier. I nodded, laughing softly, and pulled her into a warm embrace. Before we left, I made sure I had everything we needed. I handed Natalie a black satin clutch purse and a pair of white satin wrist-length gloves to complete her ensemble. As she slid the gloves on, I gazed at her and said how stunning she looked. Natalie hesitated, her voice soft as she asked if she appeared out of place. I reassured her with heartfelt sincerity that she looked absolutely lovely. Her cheeks reddened with bashful delight as she picked up her purse and followed me to the car, ready to embark on her first evening out. During the drive to the restaurant, I'd offered Natalie some gentle coaching on dining etiquette. I explained the kind of dishes a lady might order and reminded her that a fork was not to be used as a shovel, as Nathan had once approached meals. I also suggested she lightly dab her lips with a napkin rather than wiping them. When we pulled up to the valet, I reminded Natalie to exit the car with grace, and she stepped out flawlessly, her movements natural and confident. As we walked toward the restaurant, I noticed Natalie's radiant smile. Curious, I asked her what was making her so happy. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling, and said, "Mother, I love the sound of my heels clicking on the pavement. I adore the sensation of my slip and dress swaying against my legs, and the feel of Satan hugging my body. But most of all, I'm thrilled to be experiencing all this as your daughter, Natalie. It's so exciting." I reached out to touch her arm reassuringly, promising her that this would be the first of many such experiences, each just as special. I couldn't help but notice several young men giving Natalie more than just a passing glance as we entered the restaurant, though I wasn't sure if she had caught their admiration. The hostess welcomed us with a warm smile and led us to a cozy table. Our waitress greeted us cheerfully, addressing us as ladies. I could see the pride in Natalie's face at being acknowledged as such. When our drinks arrived, I was quietly pleased to see Natalie order a small salad and a fish entree choices she never would have made as her former self. Throughout dinner, we chatted like any mother and daughter might, sharing laughs and stories. At one point, I leaned in and whispered to Natalie that everyone around us was embracing her as the young lady she appeared to be. I added with a playful grin that she was even catching the eyes of several young men in the room. Her cheeks flushed slightly, but her delighted smile said it all. As we finished our meal and prepared to leave, Natalie gently tugged on my sleeve. She leaned in close and whispered that she needed to use the restroom. I smiled, leading her to the ladies' room and offering a quiet reminder on how to manage her dress while in the stall. I waited patiently outside, and when she emerged, I guided her to the sink to wash her hands. Taking the opportunity to teach, I encouraged her to check her makeup and refresh it as needed. Natalie watched intently as I demonstrated, mimicking my actions with careful precision. Once we were both satisfied with our polished appearances, we left the restroom and headed to retrieve our car. On the way home, Natalie was buzzing with excitement. Her voice bubbled with joy as she recounted every detail of her first evening out as Natalie. She couldn't stop talking about how magical it all felt. Sensing her enthusiasm, I asked if she would like to experience the pampering of a beauty salon. Her eyes lit up, and she exclaimed, "Can we, Mommy? Can we? I'd love to have my hair and nails done at a salon." I smiled, promising to call first thing in the morning to book appointments. Once we were back home, I helped Natalie undress and properly hang up her clothing. I suggested she leave her bra and panties on for sleeping and selected a peach satin waltz-length nightgown for her to wear. After showing her how to cleanse her makeup and care for her skin, I handed her a white satin sleep bonnet to protect her styled hair, which she eagerly put on. As I finished tucking her in, she looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Oh yes, please." Smiling, I leaned down to kiss her forehead, whispering goodnight to my daughter Natalie. As I gently tucked Natalie into bed, I asked if she'd like to start transforming her room into something more feminine. Her eyes lit up with excitement, and she eagerly asked what changes could be made. I explained that we could start with small touches, perhaps a pink area rug, pastel sheets, a more ladder-like bedspread, and lacy curtains. From there, we could consider larger updates, like getting her a vanity or even a four-poster bed with a canopy if she wished. Before I turned to leave, Natalie reached out, pulling me into a warm hug. She thanked me, not just for everything that day, but for how understanding I'd been when I first discovered her dressed. With a shy smile, she admitted she had secretly hoped I'd catch her and that my response would be just as kind as it had been. My heart swelled as I hugged her tightly and wished her sweet dreams, assuring her I'd do my best to book us appointments at the salon in the morning. As her head rested on the pillow, I heard her softly murmur, "I hope you can get the appointments." That night, I slipped into my dark green satin nightgown and slept more soundly than I had in ages. When morning came, I awoke early, feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. I put on my matching satin robe and slippers and headed downstairs. It would still be a while before the salon opened, so I settled into the family room with a book to pass the time. My thoughts wandered to how Natalie was still sound asleep, a stark contrast to Nathan, who was usually an early riser. As soon as I thought Sandra, my stylist, might be at the salon, I made the call. She picked up, and I began by asking if she could keep a matter entirely confidential. Sandra, who had been a trusted stylist and confidant for years, agreed without hesitation. I explained how I had found Nathan dressed in my lingerie the previous day and how we'd agreed to let her live as Natalie for a while. Sandra listened intently, her voice kind and understanding. Then, I got to the heart of the matter. I asked if she could fit Natalie and me into her schedule for hair appointments and manicures. Sandra assured me she could, setting us up for noon. She mentioned that she wanted to personally work on Natalie's hair and asked if I'd mind being seen by Chloe, her second-best stylist. I was more than happy to agree and thanked her warmly. Sandra sounded genuinely excited about meeting Natalie. After hanging up, I went to check on Natalie. There she was, nestled in her bed, looking absolutely precious in her peach satin nightgown and white sleep bonnet. For a moment, I just watched her, cherishing how peaceful and content she seemed. But we had appointments to keep, so I opened the curtains, letting in the soft morning light, and gently called her name. Natalie stirred, opened her eyes, and smiled. She said how lovely it felt to wake up as Natalie, and that she'd slept wonderfully, her dreams filled with happiness. I told her she could relax a little longer while I showered, but then we'd need to start getting ready to avoid being late. At that, Natalie's face lit up, and she let out a delighted squeal. As she sat up, she asked eagerly about the time of our appointments and what we'd be having done. I explained that we were scheduled for shampoos, sets, and manicures, which only made her more excited. I also mentioned that I had confided in Sandra about her, since Sandra knew I didn't have a daughter. I asked if this revelation made her uncomfortable. Natalie's response was full of grace and optimism. She said she was happy to live her life as Natalie and hoped that people would accept her for who she was. Her confidence and joy reassured me that this journey was as meaningful for her as it was for me. I left Natalie's room and headed to the bathroom for a refreshing shower. Slipping off my robe and nightgown, I placed them in the hamper, secured a shower cap over my hair, and stepped into the warm cascade of water. The gentle spray washed over me, invigorating and soothing all at once. Once finished, I dried off, dusted myself with lavender bath talc, and wrapped a towel snugly around myself. Ready to keep things moving, I returned to Natalie's room to rouse her for the day. I instructed her to wear my shower cap, apply talc just as I had, and wrap her towel the same way. Natalie nodded and headed to the bathroom, her enthusiasm undiminished. Meanwhile, I returned to my bedroom to dress. I quickly slipped into my black satin lingerie, complete with a garter belt, and was just fastening my stockings when Natalie reappeared. She looked fresh and radiant, her towel neatly wrapped around her, embodying the image of a sweet young girl ready to start her day. Natalie perched delicately on the bed as I finished adjusting my stockings. I handed her tan stay-up stockings, a lacy white satin bra, and matching panties, along with another maxi pad to wear. While Natalie began to dress, I turned to the closet to select our outfits for the day. For myself, I chose a gold satin blouse and a black knee-length satin skirt, and for Natalie, a pale blue satin blouse paired with a navy knee-length satin skirt. When I handed Natalie her outfit, she looked at me with admiration, remarking once again that I had the prettiest clothes. I smiled as she carefully dressed in her chosen pieces, taking the same care and pride I did. I selected 2-inch heels for myself and 1-inch heels for Natalie, which prompted a playful pout from her over not being allowed to wear higher heels. Gently, I reminded her that there was a distinct difference between day wear and evening wear, a lesson she took in stride. Once dressed, I gave her a quick inspection to ensure everything was perfectly in place. I had her sit at my vanity while I applied her makeup. Natalie, ever the attentive learner, watched closely, clearly eager to master the art herself. As I worked, I explained that we get her a set of her own makeup after our salon visit. I emphasized that a young lady only needs a touch of makeup to enhance her natural beauty. I applied foundation and powder lightly, added a soft blush to her cheeks, and brushed mascara onto her lashes. Finally, I finished with a delicate pink lipstick. Natalie's reflection glowed with youthful beauty, and her smile lit up the room as she declared herself ready for her salon appointment. Just as we were about to leave, the sky darkened, and the rain began pouring down in sheets. I hesitated, not wanting her outfit to get wet during the dash to and from the car. I had only one modern raincoat, which wouldn't be enough for both of us. But then I remembered an old clear plastic raincoat tucked away in the back of my closet. I asked Natalie if she'd mind wearing a retro-style raincoat to protect her clothes. To my delight, she embraced the idea, playfully imagining herself as a retro woman in the rain. I retrieved the raincoat and handed it to her. Natalie slipped it on over her satin outfit with a grin, while I donned my sleek teal raincoat. As she adjusted the hood, Natalie laughed, jokingly calling us the old and the new. I told her to be grateful for any raincoat that kept her dry, no matter the style. She smiled and thanked me for looking out for her as we ventured into the storm. Our spirits were high as we made our way to the car, chatting cheerfully about our upcoming salon visit. Fortunately, I found a parking spot right in front of the salon, sparing us a long walk in the rain. Together, we hurried inside, Natalie's laughter and excitement turning what could have been a dreary day into one full of joy. As we removed our raincoats and hung them up, Sandra approached us with her usual warmth. She greeted me with a quick hug and then turned her attention to Natalie. Pulling Natalie into a gentle embrace, she complimented her, saying how pretty she was and how much she had heard about her. Natalie's cheeks turned a soft shade of pink as she blushed at Sandra's kind words. Sandra then guided Natalie to the shampoo bowl to start her appointment, and I followed, meeting Chloe, who was ready to assist me. Once we were seated, both Sandra and Chloe draped pink shampoo cakes over us, securing them snugly around our necks to protect our outfits. I couldn't help but glance at Natalie from the corner of my eye as she leaned back into the shampoo chair, her purse resting neatly in her lap. Sandra chatted amiably as she began washing Natalie's hair, wetting it thoroughly before working in a rich lather of shampoo. She rinsed and repeated the process, her hands moving with the skill of years of experience. Afterward, she applied a creamy conditioner, ensuring Natalie's hair would be soft and manageable. Meanwhile, Chloe was performing the same routine on me, and the comforting rhythm of the salon enveloped us both. When Sandra finished rinsing the conditioner from Natalie's hair, she gently wrung out the excess water and wrapped it in a dry towel. Natalie was then led to Sandra's styling station, where she sat with anticipation. Shortly after, I joined Natalie at the adjacent station as Chloe began rolling my hair. Sandra, working quickly but with precision, combed through Natalie's damp hair, trimming the ends with a practiced hand to refine the work I had started the day before. She then began rolling Natalie's hair onto curlers, moving with a deft efficiency. In no time, Natalie's hair was secured in rollers and covered with a pink hairnet before she was guided to the dryer. Chloe took a bit longer, so I waited briefly before settling under the dryer next to Natalie. As I sat down, I noticed that Sandra had already rolled a manicure table in front of Natalie. Before the dryer hood came down over her head, Natalie leaned toward me with a radiant smile and whispered that she felt so feminine. Her happiness was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile back. Both of us had manicure tables ready in front of us, and we began soaking our nails in a softening solution to prepare them for cleaning and shaping. Chloe worked meticulously on my cuticles, carefully rounding the tips with an emery board, while Sandra gave Natalie the same attentive treatment. For my nails, I chose a striking red polish with a glossy, almost wet finish. Sandra, on the other hand, selected a delicate luminescent pink for Natalie's nails, a shade that perfectly complemented her youthful beauty. I watched as Sandra carefully applied the polish to each of Natalie's nails, finishing with a second coat and a clear top coat for durability and shine. By the time our nails were done, our hair was also fully dried. Sandra and Chloe removed us from the dryers and escorted us back to their styling stations for the final touches. Sandra began by removing Natalie's hairnet and curlers, her fingers deftly shaping the curls with a brush and comb. She added styling mousse for volume and hairspray for hold, crafting Natalie's hair into a soft outward flip that framed her face beautifully. She styled the front into gentle bangs, enhancing Natalie's delicate features. As Sandra admired her work, she reminded Natalie to wear a satin sleep bonnet at night and a shower cap when bathing to preserve her new hairstyle. With both of our hairdos complete, Sandra removed Natalie's protective cape, and we headed to the counter to pay for our services. I tipped Chloe and handed Natalie money to tip Sandra. Natalie approached Sandra with a grateful smile, offering her the tip. Sandra hugged her warmly and whispered how honored she was to have done Natalie's hair for the first time. She expressed excitement about seeing Natalie again for future beauty services, and Natalie beamed, replying that she would love to return. Sandra assured her she was welcome anytime. With our fresh hairstyles and manicures, we stepped out of the salon, feeling polished and confident. The day had turned into a delightful milestone, marking another cherished moment for Natalie and me to share. We slipped on our raincoats, ensuring the hoods were snugly covering our freshly styled hair. As we made our way out, Sandra complimented Natalie on how charming she looked in her retro plastic raincoat, a comment that brought a shy but delighted smile to her face. The rain was still coming down steadily, so we dashed quickly to the car. Once inside, I turned to Natalie and asked if she was up for one more girlish experience before the day ended. Her face lit up with excitement as she replied, "Mother, I'm up for as many girlish experiences as we can fit in today. What did you have in mind?" I suggested a shopping trip to get Natalie some things of her own, especially some soft, silky sleepwear. Natalie beamed and agreed enthusiastically, saying she'd love to shop with me. I mentioned that the mall we were headed to had a covered parking garage, so we wouldn't need our raincoats indoors. Natalie playfully pouted, saying how much she adored her plastic raincoat and imagined it might turn a few heads of those who appreciated such fashion. Then, breaking into a mischievous smile, she said she'd save that for another time and left her raincoat in the car. Entering the mall from the garage, we walked toward the lingerie store. Along the way, we passed a photo studio, and on impulse, I steered Natalie inside. I thought it would be wonderful to have individual photos of Natalie as well as some mother-daughter portraits of the two of us together. Watching Natalie pose for the photographer, I was struck by how naturally she exuded the self-assured glow of a young woman discovering her identity. The photographer captured Natalie in 3 different poses, and when we reviewed the images on the computer, they were all stunning. For our mother-daughter shots, Natalie stood behind me while I was seated, her hands resting lightly on my shoulders. The assistant commented on how lovely we both looked and how these photos would make a cherished keepsake. I ordered our selections, thanked her, and we resumed our trip to the lingerie store. Natalie turned to me and asked if she could pick out her own sleepwear and panties, promising to let me offer my input. I smiled and agreed, and Natalie replied with a grin, "Mother, I wouldn't have it any other way." Once inside, Natalie eagerly headed for the sleepwear section. She picked out 2 sets of baby doll pajamas, both adorned with delicate ribbons and matching lacy panties, one in pink satin and the other in pale yellow satin. Next, she chose a waltz-length nightgown in mint green satin and paused over an ankle-length black satin gown. She seemed hesitant about the elegant gown, so I encouraged her to include it, telling her it was too beautiful to leave behind. Natalie smiled and added it to her growing pile without hesitation. From there, she moved to the panties, carefully selecting several pairs made from satin and lace in an array of colors. She chose pastels like pink and yellow, bold shades like red and emerald green, and the classic staples of black and white. Her thoughtful choices impressed me, and I told her as much, earning a warm smile in return. Just as we were about to check out, Natalie caught sight of a display of slips. She immediately gravitated toward them, selecting 3 satin and lace pieces in red, black, and white. Handing them to me, she leaned in with a playful whisper, saying, "Even a young woman needs pretty lacy slips to feel beautiful under her clothes." With our arms full of Natalie's selections, we made our way to the counter to pay. As I watched her face light up with joy and pride over her choices, I felt deeply grateful for these moments of shared discovery and connection. Today wasn't just about shopping, it was about Natalie embracing her identity and the bond between us growing stronger with every step of her journey. We left the lingerie store with our arms full of bags containing Natalie's carefully chosen purchases. As we walked back to the car, I couldn't help but notice the sheer joy radiating from her. Natalie seemed so light-hearted and elated that it was as if she were floating on air. At the car, I suggested that she put on her raincoat again, as the rain was still falling steadily. She placed her bags neatly in the back seat, then carefully slipped on her clear plastic raincoat, taking a moment to adjust it over her outfit. As we drove away, Natalie turned to me with an eager expression and asked if she could discuss a few items she'd someday like to add to her wardrobe. Intrigued, I told her I'd consider her requests. Natalie began by sharing how, after she started wearing my lingerie, she had spent time online researching different types of feminine apparel. She explained that there were 4 particular items that had captivated her imagination. The first item on her list was a satin corset, either front-laced or back-laced. She wanted to experience the transformative effect of such a garment, shaping her body to create a more traditionally feminine silhouette. I nodded, listening intently. The next item made me raise an eyebrow in surprise: a satin French maid's uniform. Natalie said she thought it would be fun to wear it while helping with housework, fully embracing the playful elegance of the role. Her third request was a long satin formal gown paired with elbow-length satin gloves. She spoke about the elegance and femininity of such an ensemble, her voice filled with awe. Finally, Natalie admitted she dreamed of having a satin and lace wedding gown with a veil. She wanted to experience the magic of being a bride, imagining the beauty and significance of wearing such an iconic garment. When she finished sharing her list, I paused for a moment before responding. I assured her that a corset would be a wonderful addition to her wardrobe, as it would help her achieve excellent figure training. Smiling at the thought of her second request, I agreed that if she wished to dress as a French maid while helping with housework, I would be happy to provide her with a uniform and any suitable undergarments she needed. I commended her enthusiasm and assured her we could make it happen. For the long satin formal gown, I told her it was indeed an elegant choice and something every young woman should have in her wardrobe. I promised that we would shop for the perfect one soon. Natalie's eyes lit up at my encouragement, but before I could continue, she interjected with an expectant look. "And the wedding gown?" she asked eagerly. I took a deep breath, sensing how much this request meant to her. I told Natalie that it was every mother's dream to one day see her daughter in a wedding gown on her special day. Then, with a smile, I revealed that I would be delighted for her to wear my own wedding gown whenever she desired. I explained that it was packed away in the attic, carefully preserved, and ready for just such an occasion and opportunity I never thought I'd have. I assured her that everything was there, from my bridal lingerie and veil to the slip and shoes. I even offered her my wedding negligee, saying how beautiful I had felt in those items and how certain I was that she would look equally stunning. By the time I finished, Natalie was positively beaming with joy, her face alight with gratitude and disbelief. She couldn't believe I was willing to share such meaningful pieces of my life with her. I reached over, squeezing her hand gently, and said, "That's what mothers do for their daughters." In that moment, the bond between us felt stronger than ever, woven together with love, understanding, and acceptance. As Natalie drifted off to sleep in her cozy bed, I sat in the dim glow of the living room, sipping a cup of tea and reflecting on the day. My thoughts swirled with the incredible transformation Natalie had undergone, not just outwardly, but in her confidence and happiness. It was as if her true self had been waiting, hidden beneath the surface, and now she was finally blooming. My heart swelled with pride and love for my new daughter, and I silently vowed to support her every step of the way. The days that followed were filled with shared laughter and bonding. We shopped for more clothes, experimented with makeup tutorials, and even planned small outings where Natalie could experience life as the young woman she was becoming. She blossomed in every way, her shyness melting away to reveal a vibrant, self-assured spirit. Every moment was a celebration of her newfound identity, and I found myself growing alongside her, rediscovering joys I had long since forgotten. One evening, as the golden hues of sunset streamed through the kitchen window, Natalie came to me with a small box in her hands. She looked nervous yet determined. Setting it down on the table, she said, "Mother, there's something I've been wanting to share with you." I've been waiting for the right moment. I encouraged her to go on, my curiosity piqued. Natalie opened the box to reveal a delicate silver locket. She explained that it had been given to her by her grandmother, who had always told her to keep it safe for when she truly understood who she was. "I think now I know," Natalie said, her voice trembling slightly. Inside the locket was a tiny handwritten note that read, "Be true to yourself and happiness will find you." Natalie and I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling over us. She smiled softly and said, "I want to wear it as a reminder of this journey, of how far I've come." I helped her fasten the locket around her neck, and it glinted in the fading sunlight, a symbol of her resilience and the love that had brought us to this point. As summer unfolded, Natalie grew into her new life with grace. But as the days passed, something else began to emerge, something unexpected. During one of our outings, Natalie caught the attention of a young man working at the local cafe. His name was Terence, and he was kind, gentle, and quick to smile. At first, the conversations were casual, just polite exchanges about coffee orders or comments on the weather. But soon, I noticed the way Natalie's cheeks would flush when he spoke to her, and how her eyes sparkled when she recounted their encounter. One evening, Natalie hesitated before sitting down at the dinner table. She seemed lost in thought, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. Finally, she blurted out, "Mother, Terence asked me if I wanted to go to the summer festival with him this weekend. Do you think I should?" My heart skipped a beat. Natalie had come so far, but the idea of her navigating her first romantic experience was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. I smiled gently and said, "Natalie, if you feel ready, then I think you should go. It's important to explore these moments and trust yourself." When the weekend arrived, Natalie looked radiant in a floral summer dress and a light shawl. Her excitement was palpable, but so was her nervousness. I gave her a reassuring hug as she left, watching her walk out the door with Terence, who greeted her with a bouquet of wildflowers. That evening, I waited for her to return, wondering how it had gone. When she finally came back, her face was glowing. She sat down beside me, clutching the wildflowers to her chest, and whispered, "Mother, it was perfect. He treated me like a princess." But there was more to her story than she initially shared. As the summer wore on, Natalie and Terence grew closer, their connection deepening. Natalie confided in him about her journey, expecting judgment but receiving nothing but understanding and affection. Terence told her that her courage and authenticity were what drew him to her in the first place. The unexpected ending to our summer came when Terence approached me one evening, his demeanor serious yet kind. He wanted to formally ask my blessing to continue seeing Natalie, assuring me that his intentions were sincere. Moved by his honesty, I gave him my blessing, knowing that Natalie's happiness was all I could ever want. As autumn rolled in, Natalie's life was a far cry from where it had been just a few months prior. She had not only embraced her femininity, but had also found a love that celebrated her for who she truly was. Watching her flourish, I realized that the journey we had embarked on together was not just hers, it was ours. And though the summer had come to an end, the story of Natalie's life was only just beginning.